Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
In this episode, Eric Depue, school social worker with Millard Public Schools, shares his passion about supporting the whole school community. Without any further ado, Eric Depue.
Eric, thank you so much for being here with us. For those listeners that don't have the privilege of knowing you, that don't know that you're 7'7" and 360 dunk, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your role in education is?
You bet. Before I do that, my wife is saying, well, how do you know Josh? How do you know him other than through work? I'm like, I first met him like 8 years ago playing basketball at Miller North Middle School. I think Sean Jurasek maybe is you were buddy with Sean or whatever. But yeah, I wish I was 7'7". But no, my name's Eric Depue. I'm a school social worker for Millard Public Schools. I've been working for 8 years. And then I'm also a licensed therapist. And so I do clinical therapy part-time on the side. So I've been at Miller North Middle School for 8 years. And as I mentioned earlier, I help out with Cather Elementary School. It's one of actually it's right next to Miller North Middle School. So I get to go over and help them. And, when they have needs and resources and stuff like that, I help out with them too.
So for those of you who may not be aware, Millard is a suburb of Omaha, Nebraska, just to the southwest, outside of Omaha. But how did you said you're a licensed therapist. How did you get into wanting to be involved with the school system? What was that journey like for you, Eric?
Man, that goes back to in high school. I think I was a senior in high school, and there was this, I don't remember the acronym, but basically it was like a drug-free kind of thing. And so we, like some volunteers and seniors, would go to the local elementary schools and like help out and do some lessons and play games and have fun, whatever. But it was there I kind of realized I really like working with kids, and I always kind of knew I was going to do something with kids. I ended up going to University of Sioux Falls in South Dakota. I played basketball, and as part of our basketball team, we were mentors for a local higher needs school. And so I was there mentoring a couple kids. Just kind of always had that feeling like I really like working with kids. It just kind of came naturally for me. I didn't really know in what capacity. In fact, I thought I was going to be a cop. My undergrad's in criminal justice sociology. So I moved down after school to Omaha and applied for OPD in Bellevue, and I almost got on with Bellevue Police Department. And I remember I was sitting there with the third interview with this guy, and it was with my fiance at the time. And he was like, yeah, you're going to be working in the worst neighborhoods in these terrible hours, and it's going to be really stressful and everything. I'm like, maybe it was something I want to do. And so my wife we moved back up to South Dakota because she got her master's in counseling, because she's also an educator. She's a high school counselor for Millard. But she got her master's, and then I started working for Child Protective Services. So I was an investigator. So, as a teacher, you call because you're worried that a kid in your class, something's going on. I would be the guy who would, if it was a sign, would go into the house, investigate, interview kids, families, teachers, whatever, and then try to, address safety issues. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, it was pretty eye-opening for someone who's coming from the Midwest, small, sleepy town, didn't have a lot of like life experience, so to say, and you kind of get in some of those circumstances, and you learn a lot, and again with kids. And then I decided social work kind of fit that mold of you can do a lot of different things, and you can work with kids, you work with families, you can work with community members and stuff. So we moved back here in 2010, and I started my master's at UNO. And as I was graduating, I was lucky enough to get an internship, a paid internship. So basically they hired me to do my internship at Miller North Middle School. And that's kind of like, it just has been a natural fit. In middle school, you guys are elementary, but the middle school is always kind of fun. It's kind of a little stinkier, and kids are a little weird, but it's a great fit. I love it. And it's definitely, like I tell people, it's a dream job for me. It's something I just love to do. And it's the best.
And what's your role there look like? Because our social worker isn't at school with us full time, but you are at the middle school all day.
When I first got hired, I was hired to replace a middle school counselor role. And so a traditional counselor who's doing lessons, whose work has a grade level, who works with kids and stuff like that. So I kind of came in with, in addition, like counselors are teachers generally first, and then they get their master's and they move on or whatever. I kind of came in as a wild card, and my administrator, Dr. Ingerson, hired me to fill that counseling role and that social work role, which is a little bit more like macro focus, like systems and families and community and resources and stuff like that. And so my plate is kind of like, I manage, like right now I'm working with 6th grade, and then I'll follow them through 8th grade and on, and then loop back around in 6th grade. But I have my own grade level, and of all the counseling duties. But then I have the social work part of my job, which is like monitoring attendance and helping out families. And, you know, one of my favorite true social work stories was a lady who couldn't get her kids to school because she had a flat tire. So do you remember Kyle Peterson?
Yeah.
KP and I went and changed this lady's tire and put some gas in her car so she could, just like stuff like that, that as an educator, you're like, I'm not going to go change a tire, but it's just like one of those things, like you do what you can to get kids to school. And that's stuff I love about my job. It's just so fluid, and you can't prepare for everything, I guess.
I think that's true for all teaching.
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
Awesome. I did not know that your job encompassed all of that.
One thing I mentioned earlier, that being in the classroom as a counselor, sometimes we do like our suicide lessons and our bullying lessons and all those types of lessons we have throughout the year, our curriculum, like that day to day. I have so much respect for you guys to sit there in a classroom and like teach the same lesson and deal with the behavior in the classroom and all that kind of stuff. Try to find a time to go to the bathroom. I love my job because it's like I can have a plan of what I'm going to do that day, but something hits the fan and a kid comes in and something bad happened at whatever last night, or, on Friday before break, I had to take a couple big bags of food to a lady and her daughter who's a student who they got, moved out of their house for some unforeseen circumstances, like stuff like that. Like you don't plan on, but man, I love that. I love that like spontaneity of like, you have to kind of think on your feet and you have to be able to plan for the unexpected, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's incredible. You really have your hands in a lot of pots, a lot of jars. You really have your head on a swivel, it sounds like, man. And you deal with some really tough situations. You talk about evictions, you talk about food scarcity or insecurity, you talk about, changing a tire, not having money to put gas in the car. Like, how do you maintain your positive outlook? How do you maintain that positivity that great educators have, that great education demands, while balancing some of these really tough situations?
Well, I'm sure you guys are the same, but I know you guys don't go to school for the paycheck, right? I mean, like you go because you care about the kids. You want the kids to learn. You want them to be successful. And that's one thing I noticed, because Tom, I know Josh a little bit more. Like I've known Josh for a long time, and like you're always so positive, and you're always doing what's right, what's best for kids. Like, even if that means sacrificing your own mental health, your own, energy, your own whatever. And I tell kids this all the time. I get energy when I'm talking to a kid who walks in and just had the worst day and is upset and whatever. And we connect, we have a conversation, and they leave my office feeling better or better equipped or more prepared for whatever their problem is. Like that fills my bucket. And so when I can walk, like I told you, I brought some food to a family. When I walk away and they're just so thankful and they're so appreciative, like that's all I need. That's what makes me tick, and that's what makes me feel like I'm making a difference or doing the right thing.
Yeah, and hearing you share that story, I mean, that warms my heart, because that's what teaching is being there for kids, for families, and loving them and supporting them.
Around the holiday season, especially like with COVID and everything, I mean, everyone knows everything going on. There's such a need for like just basic needs, food, presents for the holidays and everything. And I'm so proud to work at North Middle School, because I mean, we have so many teachers who come up and say, hey, I have some money left over, or I have a coat that I want to donate, or I have this or that. I mean, I think our school, we had teachers, we donated like 15 something, like full everything meals to kids in need at our building, anonymously. Like, it's so like, people want to help, and people, even if they are stressed out and tired and frustrated that kid won't do his homework, like they want to help, and they understand that like it's not just about academics, it's about everything. It's the whole child. It's the stuff we don't have control over outside of school that is important. And I just can't say enough about how awesome our teachers are. And I'm sure you guys have the experience with your colleagues and your coworkers as well.
Yeah, you guys really do have a great culture there. From meeting you and Josh and KP and Eric when he was there, you guys have a great culture that you've built at your school, and it shows.
Yeah, and I know, I know that's not the same everywhere. And that's unfortunate, but I think it boils down to having people who love what they do and they enjoy going to work and meeting those people and having fun with their coworkers and not taking things too seriously at times. Like, that's one thing about me is I'm kind of I'm perfect for the middle school level because my maturity level is probably right about on par with the middle school kids. So I can be stupid and ridiculous, and it's just a good time. And you got to have fun when you go to work, I think, too.
Absolutely, 100%. So I know that you've talked about helping families with tires, getting them food when they're in need. What are some other ways, especially when you're at school? What are some ways that you invest in your kids, and because you're not in the classroom with them all the time, that you build that relationship with them so that they know that you're there to love them and to look out for them and care for them?
I'm glad that you say to love them, because I think that's one of those things that, like, in our profession, that's maybe there has been a stain on people, that word, right? But like, we love our kids. We love the kids. And it's a little bit more challenging, I think, because I don't have them in my class for 40 minutes a day or whatever every day. Like, I do my best to be visible. So passing periods, before and after school, lunch. I love lunch duty is my favorite part of my day, because I get to have unfiltered access to talk to the kids. And I walk around and I'm sick, like you said, I'm 6'6", I'm a big guy, kind of like people see me when I walk in the room. And so, like, that coupled with just being a goofy, I use a lot of sarcasm. Like, I just give kids a hard time and have fun with them and talk trash. And like, when it's not COVID, we'll play basketball at lunch. And, like, I'm always just out there and trying to be visible. And then I tell kids that whenever a kid comes talk to me, I said, like, and I mean this, I said, I will never lie to you. I'm never going to judge you. I'm never going to think negatively about you. And I can do everything in my power to prove that through my actions. And so when I talk to kids and they come in and they meet with me and they're spilling their guts about whatever it is, like, I follow through with what I say. And so I don't give them a reason to be like, oh yeah, he's full of whatever, like they know that I care. There are times it's difficult in my role where, like, I maybe have a kid who's got a lot of trauma and a lot of whatever going on, but it also is a behavior, right? And so, like, there's that fine line of going in and addressing a kid and preserving the relationship, but also, assisting the teacher or whoever to make sure that they're not being a distraction or whatever it is. But I think that you guys know this, when you build a relationship and there's respect, the kid is going to respond 100 times better than if I just walk in cold, said, and yell at a kid or whatever. And so I try to really, like, have that boundary of, like, I'm here to support and help, but there's also, like, the expectations. And I think if there's a school that has common expectations across the board, it's easier, because the kids know what to expect and, the routine and all that kind of stuff. But man, I'm just myself. I go around, have fun, be goofy, and the kids really respond to that. I'm sure if I went to the high school, they'd be like, who is this immature loser? But luckily I'm in a middle school, so it works.
That's kind of how you know when you've found your spot, when you can be yourself and love what you do every day. Then you know that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
And I worry, man, especially this year, there's a lot of teachers who are so stressed and so overwhelmed that it's hard for them to find themselves, because they have to worry about the assessment they're supposed to give, and they have to worry about that kid who won't show up for Zoom, and they have to worry about that other duty that they're not being paid for. Like, there's all those other things, and it's hard sometimes to, be positive about that. And so I really hope that teachers realize that, like, that stuff's important, but it's not that important. Like, build that relationship, get that kid to buy in, have fun. And, like, because education, I feel like it has a really bad tendency to burn out a lot of really great teachers, and sometimes they have to find that balance, that dynamic of, like, not taking it too seriously for their own mental health, their own, like, well-being, I guess.
I think that's true. I think as a whole, education, you just nailed that so well. Great people go into it. They get burnt out. There's a lot of mental fatigue. There's a lot of heavy lifting sometimes that goes on. And I think that's really, really important that as we round this corner out of 2020, finally into 2021, that, you know, we take a second, we celebrate everything that we did, everything that we've really lifted and hoisted on our shoulders and backs. And I think that's super, super important, that reflective piece, as we move forward, you know?
Like, seriously, I have so much respect for you guys. Like, in the middle of a school year to say, hey, we're going to totally change how you do everything in a week or a day or whatever. Like, and I know, like, for my own, I have 2 kids who are in elementary school. I just know that, like, were things perfect? No, but like, were they really impressive on such a short notice, and like how much they're still learning and engaged? And I don't know. I don't think people who are not in education realize like how difficult it was and how like impressive it is that guys like you and the teachers that we work with every day are able to be so successful with so little instruction, or like just like, hey, here you go teach those kids, you know, when they're not in front of you. It's impressive. It really is.
The school district that we're all in is really, I think, doing some incredible things, because they really look at the needs of students, and they have social workers, and they have psychologists, and they have the crisis response team, you know, if there is a district-wide crisis. Talk to us a little bit about that, will you, and how Millard, the school district that we're all in, really cares for students, staff members, anybody who may be going through a traumatic experience in that regard.
Oh, that's a big question. I would say that, you know, everything you're saying about our district is very true. I think our district does a good job with foresight of trying to plan so things don't sneak up, but then at the same time you can't, right? With a district of 24,000 kids, like, there's going to be bad things that happen. And the crisis team that you mentioned is essentially, you know, it's a group of school social workers, counselors, and school psychs who, there's 3, we're lucky enough to have 3 teams. So each team has like 8 or 9-ish people. And when there's crisis, so a staff member dies, a student dies, something like that, the crisis team will respond to the building. So let's say if Josh's school had a student who died, we respond to the building, and we work with the administration and the teachers to essentially make the day or days go as smoothly as possible, while still allowing for the grieving process. And teachers who they're just lost their best friend or a kid in their class, like, that's incredibly difficult to teach. And so our job would be to step in and to work with those kids and those teachers to help transition as, you know, you go through a really crappy situation. And I've been on the crisis team. So in Millard, it's every 3 years you're on, and then you have a year off for just kind of like a mental break or whatever. And like Josh, I had a therapy dog who unfortunately passed this summer, but Stewie and I would go to all these different, you know, responses over the last several years. And it's just, it's interesting to see, you know, I mean, when you walk in a room and a kid who had just committed suicide, and there's, you know, 2 classrooms full of kids who just learned and are just beyond distraught. Like, it's really, really, it's important work. It's also really difficult work, you know, really emotional. That's one of those things when makes me think, my first year, my wife took a picture like the first week of my first year of working as a school social worker. And I was on the couch afterwards, just passed out. I was so tired. You're like, emotionally, it's not like I'm running the marathon. The emotions you deal with in a day when you're talking with kids with like the crisis routine response stuff, or as a teacher when you're, you know, teaching the same lesson for, you know, throughout the day, like it's really a taxing. And so, like, Millard, I think, tries really hard to support its teachers and staff through a variety of different means. And, you know, Josh, you mentioned my building has a really good rapport, really good like culture. And one of the cool things is, like, if, you know, you had a duty or you had something going on and, you know, you have to pick up your kid after school or whatever, it's, hey, will someone after school do my bridge duty, and it's -10 degrees out, and you'll have 3 volunteers within minutes, you know, people who are going to willing to step up. And that's just a whole, we work together to support each other is so huge. And it's so important. I think not just in education, but really in any job. If you can find a place where everyone supports each other, the success levels are going to be a lot better, I think. But I don't know what else.
Well, you talk about being on the crisis response team and all that goes into your day-to-day job. I'm sitting here and I know that you two are the same way, just totally empathetic and loving with all that you are. There's got to be times, Eric, that you feel down, that maybe that spark starts to dwindle a little bit. I know that you said like when you change that lady's tire, that fills your bucket, but seeing all of this, even for me listening, breaks me down a little bit. How do you reignite that spark, or what are some things that you do to stay inspired every day?
I'm going to answer this two ways. One, I've learned since I mentioned I was in Child Protective Services, and in that job, I saw some really, really bad stuff. Like, luckily, I didn't have any really bad like cases, but I work with people in just things that, like the stuff that you see in the news that you can't believe happens in the world today. Like, I saw some of that stuff, and like I learned in that job when I was 22, 23 years old, when I leave for the day, I leave for the day. And that's really hard, especially for teachers. Like when you have to grade and you have to plan, you do all these things, you don't have the time during the day. I think at the same time, you have to have a certain level. When I walk out the door, the work's going to be there. You need to go home, focus on your family, be with your kids, go work out of the gym. That's one of my things. Like Josh, you and I play in a basketball league together. That is Wednesday is my favorite night of the week during the season, because I know that night I got to go play basketball and talk trash to Josh and have fun and get that that emotional energy I can just expel it working out and playing basketball. That's like, I love that. But at the same time, like when I leave for the day, I know that I've put in my best and that I've done everything I can, and that I need to take care of me too. And I see so many teachers who they become so consumed with work because they feel like it's needed. And if I don't do this, it'll never get done, which to a certain degree I understand, but it's not worth your own personal, emotional well-being and your own physical health and all those things. Cause I see it every year that one teacher is just so overworked and they break down, and it's just like, it's understandable. But I think that if you go in knowing that it's 3:30 or 5 or whenever you leave, like I'm going to go home and be me, and I'm going to be with my family, and I'm going to take care of myself. And I'm not going to respond to emails till 11 o'clock at night. You have to be there's got to be a clear break of, so that's one way I try to protect myself. Cause you're right. I talk with kids, some of the most mundane. Tommy broke up with me because he didn't like my shoes, and we've been dating for 32 hours, that kind of stuff where kids are distraught, to where I have kids who attempt suicide at school. It happened this year. I mean, you just have to be able to protect yourself. But then, like you said, find those things that fill your bucket. And I got 3 kids and they drive me crazy, but I love them. I work out a lot. I have a good group of friends where we do stupid stuff and get together when we can and have fun. And, same things I'm sure you guys do, but I don't think I ever lose a spark. I think I get frustrated, or I wouldn't say, maybe overwhelmed at times with certain things about my job that drive me nuts, but that's going to happen in wherever you are. You just have to learn to deal with that. And in those cases, I ask for help. Hey, Dr. Emerson, this is out of my scope right now. Could you help me with this? Or could you, and that's again, back to that culture of sharing the load and having other people there to help when you need it. I just think relying on each other, because we're in it together, right? You guys know that. If we can rely on each other and work together, it's just so much more manageable, I think. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your question.
I love it. Josh and I have talked to seven amazing educators. You're number 8. And I think what you said is so true. I think something that's came through is somehow teaching and education got into, I'm going to shut my door and it's me and the students. And I think in order to be really successful, we need to make that move from I'm going to shut my door and it's me and my students to I may shut my door because it's safety protocol, but in the end of the day, it's us, it's our school, and,
totally is.
And administrators need to get out of it's my building into it's us administrators working together as an administrative team, if you're in the same building or not. I think the more we count on and become dependent on each other, that's healthy, and I think that if we are more vulnerable with each other, I think that's healthy too. You mentioned going and saying, hey, this isn't in my wheelhouse, or I'm overwhelmed. I think we owe that to each other as humans to be vulnerable, you know?
Because Tom, you know that if you were in that place and you need something, Josh would be the first person at your door saying, yeah, like, you go take a break. I got your kids, do this, you know, and like, we all need that from time to time. I mean, I don't care who you are. You have the guys who don't ever show emotion or, you know, whatever, like, we all feel it and we all need help from time to time. You know, in addition, another one of my hats in the district is I'm a district restraint and seclusion trainer. So we, in many of our buildings, we have behavioral programs, right, for kids who, whatever, or just in general. There's like a de-escalation component that we teach, and then there's a physical component. God forbid if we ever have to go hands-on with a kid who's, you know, doing something to harm themselves or others, you know, I teach teachers and administrators how to safely restrain and how to de-escalate kids. You don't know how many times as I'm sitting there in this training and there's an administrator who's been in the district for a long time or a new administrator or whatever, and they're asking questions about like, well, at my building, I feel like I'm the only, you know, whatever. And it's just like, you have to rely upon each other. You have to develop those trusting relationships. When I know that one kid who gets my goat, who knows my buttons, I'm not going to work with that kid when they're, you know, whatever. I'm going to have this person come and help me. And so I think, go to an IEP, right? You go to an IEP, and if you have just a SPED teacher there developing the IEP all by themselves, you're missing all the context from the teachers and the administrators and the janitor maybe who, I mean, like, if we work together, it's just so much better for kids.
Yeah, that teamwork is huge. That's something that I think I missed out on at the beginning of my career. And I work with now Sarah Rogers and Tom Henry. And they have taught me so much about working together, not having your door shut. Because I think that I kind of fell into that trap of thinking that teaching was my thing. Like, my classroom was my place. And building that teamwork with others, like I do with Tom and Sarah, has been life-changing for me. It helps me at home. It helps me with my kids. It helps me communicate with families. And just like you go to your principal and ask them, I can go over next to Sarah and say, hey, I'm stuck on this math problem. Can you help me with it? So that teamwork and communication, that's got to be a must.
I think it should be said that it's not a sign of weakness if you don't know something. If you don't, you know, it's a sign of strength if you can admit that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or I need whatever. And, you know, you put a first year teacher in a classroom and say, all right, here you go. And then that amount of ownership they have, because they're with these kids all day long, and it's their class and their scores and their growth and all that kind of stuff. Like, so much of it, I feel like teachers put upon themselves, which I understand. But at the same time, like, in my opinion, that's not the best way to go about. Like, you need help. You need to ask questions. You need to fail and learn from failure, right? Like, just like we're asking our kids to do. I mean, I don't know how many times I've done something and I'm like, oh, that was terrible. You know, and I learn from it. And the next time I try to do better, and I get feedback, and I get, you know, I ask, like last year I worked with a counselor who'd been in the district since, I don't want to out her, but from when I was a little tiny kid, you know, it's like, it's kind of nice to draw upon someone who's got a wealth of experience, just like I'm sure when you're, you know, a student teacher or your first year, you probably were coupled with somebody who would help to kind of navigate all that stuff. And I don't know, like, in my opinion, it's not a weakness to need help or to admit that you're not the best equipped on certain things, you know?
I think we can't say that enough, because that was my problem is I was given this classroom and I didn't want to say, like, I don't know how to do this, because then I thought that people would think I'm not a good teacher or that I didn't know what I was doing. And we got to remember that it's not a weakness to ask for help. It's showing you've got enough metacognition to understand, I just need some help in this area.
I don't know if you guys ever do this. If you ever go and observe another teacher, or you see a lesson that's really neat. Like, I do this sometimes. Like, if I'm in another building or I'm watching one of my colleagues talk to the student, like the way they approach like a kid who might be in distress, or whatever, and the words that they use and the things they do, I'm like, dang, that's a really good way to do about that. And I may never have known that had I not observed it or gone out of my way to like observe, you know, to see that. Just like I'm sure you guys like maybe did a lesson the same way the whole time. The new teacher comes in and does something different. You're like, why didn't I think of that? Right? Like, it's not a bad thing to admit that you could get better, right? Like, And I think as dudes, especially, there's not a lot of dudes in education, but I think a lot of times dudes especially kind of have that, like, that pound my chest, I'm the man, I got to do this all by myself. Yeah, instead of like, hey, I need some help, you know. But I think I'm on a roll, guys. I'm sorry. I feel like that's good because kids, especially young boys, need to see strong adult role models who can role model these things, right? And show them that it's okay to fail. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be emotional at times, to break down if you need to or whatever. And that's just like a life skill, let alone a school skill, you know? So.
Eric, I've loved this. This is amazing. And I love that you bring a different perspective other than being in a classroom all the time. And you get the whole, 10,000 or 30,000 foot view and see how all the cogs of the educational support system kind of fit together. So I guess the last question I want to ask is what does the world need now? Back in the 60s, there was the song, what does the world need now? What the world needs now is love. And that was the answer back then. But what does it need now?
Well, I'm going to send you my bill after we solve all the world problems, but I don't know. I think it's different for everybody. For that one kid, it could be a hug. For that one kid, it could be that 5 extra minutes after class to work on whatever. It could be for that teacher, it could be acknowledgement from an administrator that they're doing a good job. I mean, it could be so many different things. And I don't think it's got to be earth-shattering, world-changing things. It's just like, and Josh, I know you a lot more than I know Tom, but like the way you treat people with positivity and open-mindedness and caring and respect. Like if we had a little bit more of that, especially after these last several years in our world, like being able to give a crap about each other and to pick each other up when we're down and like stuff like that. Like, because we've shown we can do amazing things in the face of like unprecedented times. And I don't think it's rocket science. I think we work hard, we care, we help each other out.
I love that answer. I love that it's different for everybody. It could be a hug. It could be just a kind word. It could be just a handshake or a add away or a, hey, I heard that you did this great, had a great athletic event on the weekend. And
man,
that's everybody's different.
I like that answer too, because it's differentiation. You're given
what are you supposed to do in your classroom, man,
right? You're giving people, you're not being equal, but you're being fair. You're giving people what they need, and that is what the world needs. Is
for sure, because there is no one size fits all everything, right? Like we all need a little bit of what we need. But I feel like in an educational perspective, if we treat each child as an individual, we do our best to give them what they need educationally, emotionally, behaviorally, and we do that. Like your job as a teacher is going to be much easier because those kids are going to respond. They're going to respect you. They're going to want to come to school. They're going to tell their parents, I love, Mr. Monroe, he's an amazing teacher. And like all those things, it's like a cycle, right? It's going to reciprocate and you're going to feel great because you see this kid 20 years from now working in the community or, successfully in school and stuff like that. And it's rewarding to know that I might have played like a small piece of their journey.
Eric, this was fun.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you for coming on with us.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in this week. Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took time to listen to our guest, Eric Depue.
We hope that as you head out into this new year, you remember that the biggest factor that plays in a student's success is you. Your love, your passion, your empathy, your dedication is exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for all that you do. Have a good one.